Hey everyone, welcome back to another lecture in the GDB where we combine European history with Neo4j. Today we'll be talking about the Dutch Golden Age. So Dutch is in fact very different from other European nations during this time. And one part is that they have political independence as they have fought for and won their independence from Spain. And the Peace of Westphalia actually recognized the Dutch as independent. And instead of absolute ruler, the Dutch have a oligarchy of wealthy merchants, which also kind of leads to the next point, which is religious toleration, as Calvinism became the dominant faith with the Dutch. And however, all other religions had a religious freedom, and this openness of society permitted a free exchange of idea, as the Dutch placed economic prosperity ahead of religious uniformity. So the Dutch excelled in certain aspects to make its economy so big. So first aspect, obviously, shipbuilding, as they are a very port country, and second of all, the and second of all, the Dutch East India Company and the Dutch West India Company, which had a big impact in the spice trade with Asia, and also the Amsterdam Exchange Bank, which helped regulate its economy. The golden age of Dutch art saw private homes and public buildings replace cathedrals and castles. And instead of focusing on religious figures or traditional Roman and Greek figures, we had individual and group portraits, landscape, and genre scenes of everyday life in order to emphasize the economic prosperity of Dutch society. However, the Dutch Republic quickly declined as many costly wars could not be supported by its economy, and increased economic competition, such as the Navigation Acts by the British and also the French and Spanish, all used tariffs and also had more ports in Asia and in the New World, and they started competing with the Dutch. So thank you guys for tuning in about the Dutch Golden Age, and next lesson we'll be talking about England and the emergence of a parliamentary monarch. Hey everyone, welcome back to another lecture in the GDB course where we combine European history with Neo4j. My name is Ivan, and today we're talking about England and the emergence of a parliamentary monarch. So, English society in the 17th century, we can see the commercial rise of the commercial revolution, where the size of the English middle class increased. Also, joint stock companies were extremely big deal within English society, which kind of leads to the next point, which is that the gentry, which are wealthy landowners who dominate the House of Commons, and they were extremely willing to pay taxes as the tax burden was equitable in England, and the peasantry were not overburdened. Second, the gentry, and thus the House of Commons had a demanding role in determining national expenditures, and this led to eventual conflict with the Stuart kings. And obviously, religion, medieval Calvinists comprised the largest percentage of the English population. However, the Anglican Church was still present. Many new issues arrived with the monarch, as the Stuart kings believed that their authority came from God, such as James the First, and he believed in the divine right of kings. And this led to conflicts with Parliament, and obviously, they had many bickering, and this led to Charles the First. Charles the First also believed in the divine right, and he actually established the petitioner right. And since the previous guy James the First shut down Parliament, and the Parliament was not willing to be shut down again, so it led to the Long Parliament, um, where the Parliament uh, argued with the king and got its restoration. And this kind of led to the English Civil War, where the Cavaliers versus the Roundheads, the Cavaliers being the loyalists to the Royal King, and the Roundheads led by Oliver Cromwell, which kind of rebelled against the king. And in the end, King Charles the First was executed, and Oliver Cromwell was put into power. Oliver Cromwell started the Commonwealth, and they abolished the monarchy and the House of Lords. And instead, Cromwell took the title of Lord Protector and established a one-man rule supported by the army. And here, Cromwell brutally crushed a royalist uprising in Ireland, and he passed the Navigation Act of 1651, banning Dutch ships from carrying goods between other countries and England. And they also waged a series of wars that also weakened the Dutch. In domestic policy, Puritans were a really big hindrance as they wanted to impose a strict moral code. However, Cromwell opposed radical groups and therefore kind of pushed them out of England. And upon his death, his son Richard did not command the same respect, and thus the new king, the parliament, invited Prince Charles Stuart to return from exile and be on the throne. So in Charles II, the Restoration restored the monarchy, the Church of England, and the Parliament. However, the question of succession still continued, and so this led to another conflict between the Tories and the Whigs. And the Whigs were deeply suspicious of the Catholics and wanted to exclude James from the throne. However, Tories felt a strong loyalty to the monarchy and supported James onto the throne. But in the end, James II inherited the throne and adopted policies that antagonized both Whigs and Tories, leading to the Glorious Revolution. Where Glorious Revolution, William and Mary came into power in the Glorious Revolution, where actually nobody died, and they passed the Bill of Rights. And here, Parliament required William and Mary to accept certain things, such as laws will be only made in custody of the Parliament, the monarch should not be a Roman Catholic, etc. And there are also some prominent philosophers who arose in this time, such as Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. Thomas Hobbes published the Leviathan, and he believed that human beings are self-centered and prone to violence. And therefore, he believed that a strong government was necessary in order to keep humans in check. And John Locke, on the other hand, he published the Second Treatise of Government, and he believed that humans are products of the training, education, experience, and a reason capable of reason and goodwill. And here, a law of nature, he created a theory of natural rights and the life rights to life, liberty, and property. And therefore, they should produce governments that preserves the natural rights of people. Thank you guys for tuning in, and in the next lecture, we'll be talking about absolutism in Western Europe. Hey guys, welcome back to another lecture in the GDP lecture. And today we'll be talking about absolutism in Western Europe, specifically in France and Spain. Okay, so absolutism in France. First, we have Henry IV, or Henry of Navarre, and he went through the Edict of Nantes, which we talked about already before. And one famous guy he had as a chief minister was the Duc de Sully, and he reduced the roll of debt, built new roads and canals, revived industry and agriculture, and encouraged colonialism in the New World. And the nobility was actually based on inherited privileges on tradition of military service, and they began raising revenue by selling government offices that converted to nobility, such as robed nobles. And next we have Louis the 13th and Cardinal Richelieu, and he created the intendants system, which weakened the nobility. And say they replaced the nobles with royal officials called intendants, and they implemented royal orders. Also, we have Fronde, where the death of Richelieu and Louis the 13th left their hands into Louis the 14th and Cardinal Mazarin, and the nobles led a series of rebellions against royal authority known as the Fronde, and the rebellions were to limit rather than overthrow the monarchy. And Louis the 14th, the Sun King, and he believed in the divine right of kings, where the king inherited his authority from God, and that royal power was absolute. And one famous phrase attributed to Louis the 14th was "L'état c'est moi," and he also constructed the Versailles, um, and he underscored France's cultural dominance, art, philosophy, architecture, and fashions. And this later was tried to copied by other kings throughout Europe. And Jean-Baptiste Colbert, he was the Controller General of Finances, and he implemented strict mercantilist policies. He abolished domestic tariffs and raised royal revenues and promoted economic growth. The Louis XIV also revoked the Edict of Nantes, and he closed Protestant churches and ordered all Protestant children to be baptized as Catholics. The wars of Louis XIV include the War of Spanish Succession, where the balance of power was threatened as the King of Spain, Charles II, had no heir, and so the Spanish throne and its huge overseas empire was given to Louis' 17-year-old grandson Philip of Anjou. And so the nations of Europe feared that Louis would now create a universal monarchy that upset the balance of power, and therefore, led by England, the Grand Alliance tried to kind of fight against the French. And in the Treaty of Utrecht in 1713, Philip V was allowed to remain the king of Spain, and France was allowed to retain all of Alsace, and the English gained Spanish naval bases and slave trade from Spain, and Austria gained the Spanish Netherlands, and the Duke of Savoy received Sicily and king, the title of king. And the Spanish Spain was also an incredibly powerful nation, empire in Europe during this time. However, its golden age has left it behind, and the economic decline that followed after the many wars and rapid inflation because of importation of gold and silver also led to political decline, where Spain suffered through a series of weak and inept rulers who pursued ineffective policies. Thank you guys for tuning in today's lecture. And in the next lecture, we'll be talking about absolutism in Eastern Europe. Hey everyone, welcome back to another lecture in the Graph Database course where we combine European history with Neo4j. Today we'll be talking about absolutism in Eastern Europe. So first we have three declining empires. So first we have the Holy Roman Empire, and led by the Habsburgs and the Hohenzollerns, the Austria and Prussia, emerged as the leading German states out of this collapsing empire. And the Republic of Poland, the King of Poland was elected by Polish nobles, but he lacked severely central power. And the Ottoman Empire, led by Suleiman the Magnificent, he revitalized the Ottoman Empire, but once again besieged Vienna and saw a steady decline. So the Habsburgs are one of the oldest dynasties in Europe. By the early 1400s, most of the Holy Roman emperors were actually Habsburgs. But however, they had a series of setbacks in the 30 Years' War, but they reaffirmed their power over Austria, Bohemia, and Hungary. And Charles VI ended pragmatic sanction. So Charles VI did not have a male heir, but he did have a daughter, and due to pragmatic sanction, he treated the territories of the Habsburg Empire as indivisible and guaranteed his daughter Maria Theresa as inheriting the throne and all of the Habsburg land. Next, we have the rise of Prussia, which is the Hohenzollerns of the Brandenburg Prussia, and Frederick William, the Great Elector. He recognized that a well-equipped army would protect his territory, and he demanded and received the loyalty of the Junkers, which are the German landowners. And in exchange, the Junkers received full power over the serfs. And his successor, Frederick William I, he prioritized military, and led by the Junkers, the officer corps became Prussia's most prestigious class. Peter the Great from Russia, and since Russia was severely geographically isolated from Europe, Peter the Great set his life's agenda to westernize and modernize Russia. And following the period of Ivan the Terrible, Russia experienced weakness and disorder, called the Time of Troubles. And so before we had the Romanov dynasty, but now with Peter the Great, he set about trying to reform Russia, and he first defeated Sweden through the Great Northern War, and through this war he gained control over warm water ports in the Baltic shore. He also built St. Petersburg, and became a symbol of Peter the Great's new powerful Russia. He also controlled the boyars, which are old nobility who support traditional Russian culture, and it was a threat to Peter's reform program. So he got the boys to shave off their long beards and wear Western clothing. He also exploited the serf, and he was bound to the land. However, the Russian serfs could also be sold apart from the land. So thank you guys for tuning in into this episode. In the next lecture, we'll be going over how to use Neo4j to connect all these dots.